A Mafia boss attended a singles mixer and was paired with an older widow who didn't flinch. She looked at him and said he had dead eyes and an expensive suit, then walked out early. Everyone expected him to be furious. He showed up at her bakery the next morning. Vincent Cole stood near the bar with his hands in his pockets, wondering how much it would cost to burn this entire hotel down. Not literally. He'd stopped burning buildings years ago. These days, everything was lawyers and offshore accounts and expensive dinners with politicians who pretended they didn't know exactly who signed their campaign checks. The ballroom was full of Chicago's wealthiest singles, all dressed like they were attending someone's third wedding. Crystal chandeliers, string quartet in the corner, waiters carrying champagne that probably cost more than most people's car payments. Vincent hated every second of it. Mr. Cole, his lawyer, David Brennan, appeared at his elbow with that nervous smile he always wore when delivering bad news. The event coordinator is ready to begin the pairing process. I'm leaving. You can't, David lowered his voice. The feds are watching everything right now. Your businesses, your properties, your associations. They're building something, Vincent. You need to look like a normal, wealthy businessman attending normal, wealthy people events. I run casinos and construction. That's normal. You know what I mean. Vincent did know. The federal task force had been circling for 8 months. Nothing concrete yet, but the pressure was building. Every meeting was being photographed, every transaction flagged. So here he was, attending a singles mixer like some desperate Wall Street divorce trying to find wife number 3. The event coordinator, a woman in her 40s with an iPad and an aggressive smile, clapped her hands for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now begin our curated pairing experience. Please find your assigned table number. Vincent checked the card David had picked up for him. Table 12. He walked across the ballroom. People moved out of his way without realizing they were doing it. Conversations dropped to whispers. A woman in a red dress grabbed her friend's arm and turned around completely. Everyone in Chicago knew Vincent Cole's face. Table 12 was near the windows overlooking the city. The view was spectacular. The company would probably be terrible. Vincent sat down and waited. A minute passed, then 2. He glanced at his watch. Maybe whoever was supposed to sit here had already run. Then he heard footsteps. You've got to be kidding me. Vincent looked up. The woman standing across from him was in her late 50s, wearing a simple navy dress that looked like she'd pulled it from the back of her closet that morning. No jewelry except a thin gold wedding band. Her gray hair was cut short, and she carried herself like someone who'd worked on her feet her entire life. She stared at the table card, then at Vincent, then back at the card. This is a mistake, she said. Probably, Vincent agreed. I'm going to talk to the coordinator. Good idea. She turned to leave. Vincent went back to looking at his phone. But she didn't leave. Instead, she pulled out the chair and sat down with the kind of exhausted frustration that told Vincent this woman had already had a long day before she even walked into this hotel. Maggie Hayes, she said flatly, not offering her hand. Vincent Cole. I know who you are. She folded her arms. Everyone knows who you are. Vincent waited for what usually came next. The fear, the nervous laughter, the attempt to impress him, or the scrambling excuse to leave. Maggie just looked at him like he was a broken refrigerator she was deciding whether to fix or replace. So why's a man with dead eyes and a $5,000 suit attending something as pathetic as speed dating? The words landed like a slap. Across the ballroom, conversation stuttered. People were watching their table now, waiting for Vincent's reaction. Vincent leaned back in his chair. For the first time in years, he didn't have an immediate answer. My lawyer thinks it's good publicity, he said finally. Your lawyer's an idiot. I'll let him know. Maggie glanced at the champagne flute a waiter had placed in front of her. She pushed it away. I'm only here because my son signed me up. Said I needed to stop spending every night in the bakery. So here I am.
wasting a Friday evening with Chicago's most eligible felons. Vincent almost smiled. Almost.
You own a bakery? South Side, barely staying open, but yeah, 23 years. What's it called? Why do you care? I don't, Vincent said. I'm just trying to figure out why you're not terrified right now. Maggie studied him for a long moment. Her expression didn't change. You want the truth? She asked. Sure. You look exhausted, not dangerous, just tired. She stood up, reaching for her purse. I've buried a husband, raised a son on my own, and fought off 3 different property developers trying to take my building. You're just another man in an expensive suit who thinks fear is the same thing as respect. She started to walk away. Vincent should have let her go. That's what the old version of himself would have done. Let her leave, forget she existed, move on. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way she'd looked at him without flinching. Maybe it was the wedding band she still wore. Maybe it was the fact that he couldn't remember the last time someone had called him exhausted instead of dangerous. Mrs. Hayes? She paused. Vincent stood. Your bakery. What's the address? Maggie turned around slowly, her eyes narrowing. Why? Just curious. For a moment, she looked like she might tell him to go to hell. Instead, she pulled a business card from her purse and dropped it on the table. Then she was gone. Vincent picked up the card. Maggie's Kitchen, Ashland Avenue. He stared at the name on the card. Hayes. His memory stirred. An old file. A warehouse job gone wrong. A driver named Daniel Hayes who'd worked union routes in the early 90s. Vincent's hand tightened around the card. David appeared at his shoulder. That went well. Get the car, Vincent said quietly. We still have an hour left. Get the car, David. As Vincent walked out of the ballroom, he could feel every eye in the room following him. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about federal agents or business deals or carefully constructed public images. He was thinking about a widow who hadn't flinched and a name he thought he'd buried years ago. Vincent's driver, Marcus, pulled the black Cadillac SUV to the curb outside a narrow brick building with faded yellow awnings. The sign above the door read Maggie's Kitchen in hand-painted letters that had probably looked cheerful 20 years ago. Now, they just looked tired. You want me to come in? Marcus asked. No, stay with the car. Boss, this neighborhood. I said stay with the car. Vincent stepped out onto the sidewalk. It was barely 8 in the morning, and Ashland Avenue was already awake. A bodega on the corner, a laundromat, a check-cashing place with bars on the windows. Working-class Chicago. The kind of streets Vincent had grown up on before money and violence changed everything. The moment he closed the car door, the street went quiet. A man washing the windows at the bodega stopped mid-swipe. 2 teenagers on bikes slowed down, staring. An older woman carrying grocery bags crossed to the other side of the street without looking back. Vincent ignored them and walked into the bakery. A bell chimed above the door. The smell hit him immediately. Fresh bread, cinnamon, coffee. It reminded him of his grandmother's kitchen, back when his life had been small and simple and hadn't yet drowned in blood. The bakery was tiny. 6 small tables, a glass counter displaying pastries and cakes, and a register that looked older than Vincent. The walls were covered with faded photographs of the neighborhood, old street festivals, and smiling customers. Behind the counter, Maggie was pulling a tray of croissants from the oven. She froze when she saw him. Get out! Vincent stayed where he was. Good morning to you too. Maggie set the tray down hard. Her face was flushed from the heat of the oven, and there was flour on her apron. She looked furious. I'm serious. Get out of my shop. I just want coffee. Then go to Starbucks. I don't like Starbucks. Maggie crossed her arms. What are you doing here, Mr. Cole? I wanted to see your bakery. Why? Vincent didn't have a good answer for that. He'd spent half the night thinking about her last name, about Daniel Hayes, about the warehouse job that had gone wrong in 1993. He'd gone through old files at 3 in the morning, confirming what he already suspected. Daniel Hayes had been Maggie's husband, and Vincent had been the one who'd given the order that ended with Daniel in a body bag. But he couldn't say that. Not yet. "I was in the neighborhood," Vincent said. Maggie laughed, sharp and bitter. "You're never in this neighborhood. Your kind hasn't been on this block in 10 years, not since you bought up half the properties south of here and turned them into parking lots." "That wasn't me." "No, just people who work for you. Same thing." The bell chimed again. 2 construction workers walked in, lunch pails in hand, clearly regulars. They saw Vincent and stopped cold. "Morning, Maggie," one of them said carefully. "Morning, Tony. Morning, Dennis. Your usual." The men nodded, but didn't take their eyes off Vincent. Tony's hand drifted toward his phone, probably debating whether to call someone. Maggie started preparing their orders with sharp, angry movements. Sandwiches wrapped in paper, 2 large coffees. She didn't look at Vincent once. The construction workers paid, grabbed their food, and left quickly. The moment the door closed, Maggie turned back to Vincent. "You're bad for business. I'll buy something." "I don't want your money." "Then what do you want?" "I want you to leave." Vincent walked to the counter. Up close, he could see the exhaustion in her face, the kind that came from years of early mornings and late nights, and fighting to keep something alive that the world kept trying to kill. "Coffee," he said. "Black, and whatever pastry you'd recommend." Maggie stared at him for a long moment. Then she grabbed a cup, filled it, and slammed it on the counter hard enough that coffee sloshed over the side. $3. Vincent pulled out his wallet. He set a $100 bill on the counter. Maggie's jaw tightened. "I said $3. "Keep the change." "I don't need your charity." "It's not charity, it's payment for the coffee." "It's $100. "Then the coffee must be really good." Maggie shoved the bill back across the counter. "Take your money and get out." Vincent didn't touch it. Instead, his eyes drifted to the wall behind the register. There was a photograph there, framed in simple wood. A younger version of Maggie stood next to a tall man in a work jacket, both of them smiling in front of this same bakery. The man had his arm around her shoulders. Behind them, the awning was bright yellow and new. Vincent's chest tightened. Daniel Hayes. He'd only met the man twice, both times briefly. Daniel had driven trucks for a union that did business with Vincent's organization back in the 90s. Quiet guy, honest. The kind of person who didn't belong anywhere near the world Vincent operated in. "That's my husband," Maggie said quietly. Her voice had changed. The anger was still there, but now there was something else underneath it. Grief, raw and unhealed. "When did he pass?" Vincent asked, even though he already knew. 31 years ago. He was 34. Maggie's hand moved to the gold band on her finger, twisting it slightly. "He was killed during a robbery. Warehouse on the docks. Wrong place, wrong time. That's what the police said." Vincent said nothing. "But it wasn't random," Maggie continued. Her voice was steady now, like she'd told this story so many times it had turned into stone. Daniel worked union routes. He saw things, knew things, and the people who ran those warehouses didn't like that. "What did he know?" Vincent asked carefully. Maggie looked at him with cold, knowing eyes. "You tell me, Mr. Cole. You were already running half the docks back then." The words hung in the air between them. Vincent could have lied, could have denied it, could have walked out and never come back. Instead, he just stood there, holding her gaze. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "For what?" "For your loss." Maggie's laugh was bitter. "My loss, my family, my neighborhood, all of it. Organized crime burned through this city like a disease, and people like you just got richer while the rest of us buried our dead." She turned away, wiping down the counter with sharp, angry movements. Vincent glanced down and noticed something else. Beneath the register, partially hidden by a stack of receipts, were envelopes with red stamps. Final notice, past due, foreclosure warning. Maggie saw him looking and quickly covered them with a towel. "You need to leave," she said quietly. Vincent picked up the $100 bill and set it back on the counter. Then he turned and walked toward the door. "Mr. Cole?" He stopped. Maggie's voice was quiet now, almost sad. "Whatever you're looking for, you won't find it here." Vincent looked back at her, at the photograph on the wall, at the flower on her apron, and the wedding ring she still wore after 3 decades. "Maybe," he said. Then he walked out into the morning sunlight. Marcus was leaning against the SUV, looking nervous. "Everything okay?" "Drive," Vincent said. As they pulled away, Vincent looked back at the bakery one last time. Maggie stood in the window, watching him leave. And Vincent realized with cold certainty that he'd just walked into something he couldn't walk away from. The casino floor at the Marquis Resort was packed for a Tuesday night. Slot machines chimed, dice clattered across craps tables. Somewhere near the poker room, a woman screamed with joy over a jackpot that would barely cover Vincent's bar tab. He hated Atlantic City. Too loud, too bright, too many desperate people throwing away money they didn't have, while men like him collected the house's percentage. Vincent stood in a private suite on the 32nd floor, looking down at the boardwalk. The ocean was black under the night sky. Behind him, 3 investors from New York were discussing quarterly projections for the new construction development in Newark. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Vincent almost ignored it. Then something made him answer. "Yes?" "Mr. Cole?" The voice was strained.
Familiar. "This is Maggie Hayes." Vincent straightened. "Mrs. Hayes." The investors behind him went quiet, sensing the shift in his attention. "I wouldn't have called," Maggie said quickly, "but I didn't know what else to do. Someone vandalized my bakery last night, broke the front windows, spray-painted threats on the walls. The police came, but they're not going to do anything. They never do." Vincent's hand tightened around the phone. "What did the threats say?" "Does it matter?" "Yes." A pause. "They said I should close down, that the neighborhood doesn't need people like me anymore." Vincent closed his eyes. He knew exactly what this was. Local crews pushing out small businesses to make room for development deals. Standard intimidation. Happened in Chicago every month. Usually, he didn't care. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No, I wasn't there. My son found it this morning when he stopped by." Another pause. "I know I shouldn't have called you. I don't even know why I did. Your card was in my purse and I'll take care of it." "What does that mean?" "It means no one's going to touch your bakery again." "Mr. Cole, I'll call you tomorrow." Vincent ended the call. He turned to find all 3 investors staring at him. "Gentlemen," Vincent said calmly, "we're done for tonight. My assistant will send over the revised contracts tomorrow." They left without argument. People always did when Vincent used that tone. The moment the door closed, Vincent dialed another number. "Yeah, boss?" His head of security, Frank Caruso. "There's a bakery on Ashland Avenue, South Side. Someone vandalized it last night. I want to know who, and I want to know by morning." "Ashland Avenue? That's not our territory anymore." "I didn't ask whose territory it was. I said find out who did it." Frank hesitated. "You want us to handle it?" "No, just find out. Report back to me directly." "Got it." Vincent hung up and poured himself a drink. Whiskey. Expensive. It tasted like nothing. He stood at the window for a long time, thinking about broken glass and spray paint, and a woman who shouldn't have his phone number. The next morning, Vincent sat in a private conference room in the casino's executive wing. 5 men around the table, his Atlantic City partners, all of them connected, all of them dangerous, all of them pretending they weren't nervous in his presence.
The meeting was supposed to be about laundering casino profits through offshore accounts. Instead, it turned into something else.
Eric Malone, Vincent's underboss back in Chicago, had flown in that morning. He was 38, sharp-dressed, ambitious, the kind of man who smiled while planning your funeral. "We have a problem in Chicago," Eric said, sliding a folder across the table. "The Benedetto crew is moving into our distribution networks. They hit one of our warehouses last week, took product, killed 2 of our guys." Vincent opened the folder. Crime scene photos, names, addresses. "What do you want to do?" Vincent asked. Eric leaned forward. "I want to hit them back, hard. We take out their club on Roosevelt Road, send a message they can't ignore. Civilian casualties? It's a club. There will be collateral." Vincent closed the folder. "No." Eric blinked. "No? Find another way." "Boss, they killed our people. If we don't respond, every crew in the Midwest is going to think we're weak." "I said find another way." The room went silent. Vincent had never hesitated before. For 20 years, his reputation had been built on swift, brutal retaliation. Someone crossed him, they disappeared. Someone killed his people, he killed theirs. Simple, clean, effective. But now, for the first time, he paused. Eric's eyes narrowed. "What's going on?" "Nothing. Because if there's something affecting your judgment, my judgment is fine." Vincent stood. "Handle the Benedetto situation quietly. No civilian targets, no public spectacles. I want them pressured, not martyred." He walked out before Eric could respond. Frank called him 2 hours later. "Local crew called the Ashland Boys," Frank said. "Small time. They're working with a developer trying to buy up properties on that block. Standard intimidation tactics." "Who's the developer?" "Company called Urban Renewal Holdings, but it's a shell. Took some digging, but the money traces back to Eric Malone's cousin, Tony." Vincent went very still. "Eric's cousin?" "Yeah. Looks like Eric's been running side projects, real estate development, using local crews to clear out buildings." "Does Eric know you're looking into this?" "No. You said report directly to you." "Good. Keep it that way." Vincent hung up. So Eric was pushing out small businesses to make room for his own development deals, using Vincent's name and reputation as cover while building his own empire inside the organization. Smart. Dangerous. And now it had touched Maggie's bakery. Vincent made another call, this one to his accountant. "I need you to pay 3 months of commercial rent for a property on Ashland Avenue," he said, giving the address. "Make it anonymous. Use one of the charity accounts." "How much are we talking?" "Whatever it takes." Maggie called him that afternoon. She sounded furious. "Did you pay my rent?" Vincent leaned back in his chair. "Hello to you too." "Answer the question." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Someone anonymously paid 3 months of my overdue rent. The landlord called me this morning. He said a law firm wired the money with instructions not to reveal the source." Her voice shook with anger. "It was you. Mrs. Hayes, I don't want your money. I don't want your help. I don't want anything from you. Your windows were broken. So what? I'll fix them myself like I fixed everything else." "With what money?" Vincent asked quietly. The line went silent. "Stay out of my life," Maggie said finally. "I'm trying to help." "You can't help. Men like you only know how to destroy things. That's all you've ever done." She hung up. Vincent set the phone down and stared at it for a long time. Behind him, Eric appeared in the doorway. "Boss, we need to talk." "Not now. It's about Chicago. The situation's getting worse. We need to make a decision." Vincent turned to face him. Eric looked calm, but his eyes were calculating, watching, measuring. "Why do you care so much about some old bakery owner?" Eric asked carefully. "I don't." "Then why are we investigating vandalism on the south side like we're running a neighborhood watch?" Vincent stood. "Because I said so." Eric held his gaze for a moment longer than he should have. Then he smiled.
Of course, boss. Whatever you say. But as Eric walked away, Vincent felt it. The shift. The doubt. His own organization was starting to wonder if he'd gone soft. And in their world, soft men didn't last long.
Vincent was stepping out of his car outside a coffee shop in River North when Maggie appeared on the sidewalk. She looked like she'd walked several blocks to find him. Her coat was buttoned wrong, and there was flour on her jeans. "We need to talk," she said. Marcus, his driver, tensed. Vincent waved him off. "Mrs. Hayes." "Don't Mrs. Hayes me. You paid my rent. You had someone investigate the vandalism. Now there's a new security camera outside my bakery that I definitely didn't install." Her eyes were bright with anger. "I told you to stay out of my life." "The camera's for your protection." "I don't want your protection. I want you to leave me alone." Vincent looked at her for a long moment. Saturday morning shoppers walked past them, sensing the tension and giving them a wide berth. "I owe you a debt," Vincent said quietly. "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do. One connected to your husband." Maggie went very still. "What are you talking about?" "Spend the afternoon with me. I'll explain everything. I'm not spending a few hours, that's all I'm asking. Then, if you want me gone, I'm gone. You'll never see me again." Maggie studied his face, searching for the trap. "Why would you tell me anything?" "Because you deserve to know the truth." She crossed her arms, clearly debating whether to walk away. Finally, she sighed. "Fine, a few hours. Then you disappear." Vincent drove. No Marcus, no security, just the two of them in a BMW that probably cost more than Maggie's entire bakery. They headed south, away from the downtown towers and tourist attractions, into neighborhoods that hadn't seen gentrification or development money. Just blocks of tired apartment buildings, corner stores with bulletproof glass, and empty lots where buildings used to stand. "This is where I grew up," Vincent said, turning down a street lined with chain-link fences. "Bridgeport, back when it was run by Irish gangs and corrupt aldermen." Maggie looked out the window. "It doesn't look much different now." "It's worse. At least back then people had factory jobs. Now there's nothing." He drove past an abandoned warehouse with boarded windows. Graffiti covered every surface. "My father worked at a meat-packing plant," Vincent continued. 20 years, union man, honest. He believed if you worked hard and kept your head down, you'd be okay. What happened to him? He testified against his supervisor for skimming union funds. 2 weeks later, someone shot him in our driveway. I was 17. Maggie turned to look at him. "I'm sorry." Vincent's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "The police never found who did it. Said it was a robbery. But I knew better. My father crossed the wrong people, and they killed him for it." "So you became one of them?" "I became worse than them," Vincent said flatly. "I started running errands for the outfit. Small stuff at first. Deliveries, collections, then bigger things. By the time I was 25, I was running my own crew." He turned down another street. This one had a small park with rusted playground equipment and a basketball court with no nets. "I told myself I was different," Vincent said, "that I had rules, that I only hurt people who deserved it, that I kept civilians out of it." He paused. "But that was a lie. Violence doesn't stay contained. It spreads, touches everyone." Maggie was quiet for a moment. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked me why a man with dead eyes would show up at a singles mixer." Vincent looked at her. "The truth is, I don't know how to be anything else anymore." They ended up at a small restaurant on the lakefront, the kind of place that didn't advertise and didn't need to. Just good food and a view of Lake Michigan stretching out, gray and endless. They sat by the windows. Vincent ordered coffee. Maggie ordered tea. "Your husband worked union routes in the early 90s, Vincent said after the server left. He drove trucks for deliveries connected to warehouses I controlled." Maggie's expression hardened. "I knew Daniel's routes went through your territory."
That's why I blamed organized crime when he died. Daniel was a good man, honest. He saw things he shouldn't have seen. What things? Vincent hesitated. This was the moment. The confession he'd been building towards since he'd first seen her photograph behind the bakery counter. There were operations hidden inside those warehouses. Things I didn't directly control, but that my organization profited from. Daniel discovered them. He was going to report it. Maggie's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her tea. What kind of operations? Before Vincent could answer, his phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again, then again. Answer it, Maggie said quietly. Vincent looked at the screen. Frank's name, 3 missed calls.
He answered. What?
Boss, we've got a situation. Someone hit the warehouse on Canal Street, burned it completely. 2 of our guys are in the hospital.
Vincent's jaw clenched. When?
20 minutes ago. Fire department's still there. It's bad, Vincent. This was planned.
Who?
We're working on it, but it looks like retaliation. Maybe the Benedetto crew. Maybe someone else.
Vincent closed his eyes. I'm on my way. He ended the call. Maggie was watching him carefully.
You need to go.
Yes.
The violence is getting worse.
It always does. She set down her tea, her expression unreadable.
You were about to tell me something. About Daniel. About what he discovered.
Vincent stood, pulling out his wallet. He left $200 bills on the table. I'll drive you back to your bakery. No, Maggie stood as well. Finish what you were going to say. Not here. Not now. When? Vincent looked at her, at the woman who'd refused to be afraid of him, who'd called him exhausted instead of dangerous, who wore her dead husband's ring like armor. Soon, he said. I promise. They drove back in silence. The BMW cut through traffic while Vincent made calls, his voice cold and controlled as he gave orders to secure other properties, increase security, find out who was responsible. Maggie watched him the entire time. When they pulled up outside her bakery, she didn't get out immediately. My son's a detective, she said quietly. Ryan Hayes, Chicago PD. He's been investigating organized crime for 5 years. Vincent looked at her sharply. He doesn't know I met you, Maggie continued, and I haven't told him about Daniel's connection to your organization. But if I did, he could use it. Yes. So why haven't you? Maggie opened the car door. Because I want to hear the rest of the story first. I want to know what my husband died for. She stepped out onto the sidewalk. Mrs. Hayes, she looked back. The violence escalating around me right now? It's going to get worse before it gets better. You should stay away. Maggie's expression was sad. You're probably right. She closed the door and walked into her bakery without looking back. Vincent sat there for a moment, watching her disappear inside. Then his phone rang again. Boss, Eric's voice. We need to meet, tonight. This situation is spiraling. Where? Navy Pier, usual spot, 11 o'clock. Vincent hesitated. Something in Eric's tone felt off. Fine, he said finally. As he drove away, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just made a terrible mistake. Maggie's son showed up at the bakery Monday afternoon with that look on his face, the one that meant he was about to give her a lecture. Mom, we need to talk. Detective Ryan Hayes was 32, tall like his father, with the same honest eyes that had gotten Daniel killed. He wore his badge on his belt and worry like a second skin. I'm working, Ryan. Vincent Cole. Ryan closed the bakery door behind him. One of my CIs saw you getting into his car Saturday, outside a restaurant on the lakefront. Maggie kept wiping down tables. Your CI should mind their business. Mom, this isn't a joke. Cole's organization is under federal investigation. He's connected to money laundering, extortion, union corruption. We've been building a case for 2 years. Then you don't need me involved. That's exactly my point. Stay away from him. Maggie stopped cleaning and looked at her son. Did you know your father worked routes connected to Vincent Cole's warehouses? Ryan went quiet. What? In the early 90s,
Before you were born, Daniel drove trucks through their territory.
Mom, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about the fact that maybe your father's death wasn't as random as everyone claimed. Ryan's expression shifted from concern to something darker. Professional. Detective mode.
Has Cole told you something?
He's told me enough to make me want to hear more. Mom, I'm meeting him for dinner tonight. Navy Pier, 7 o'clock. Public place. Lots of witnesses. Maggie crossed her arms. You can either trust me to handle this, or you can follow me like I'm a suspect. Ryan looked torn. Finally, he sighed.
If anything feels wrong, you call me immediately.
I will.
But they both knew she wouldn't.
Navy Pier was crowded on a Monday evening. Tourists taking photos of the skyline, families walking toward the Ferris wheel, street performers and vendors selling overpriced souvenirs. Vincent was waiting at a table outside a seafood restaurant with a view of the water. He stood when Maggie approached.
You came,
he said, sounding genuinely surprised.
I want answers.
I know.
They sat. A server brought menus. Vincent ordered wine. Maggie asked for water. The sun was setting over the city, painting the buildings gold and orange.
Under different circumstances, it might have been romantic. You were going to tell me what Daniel discovered, Maggie said. Vincent nodded slowly. There was human trafficking hidden inside my distribution network. I didn't order it, didn't directly profit from it, but it was happening under my watch. Maggie's breath caught. Human trafficking? Women brought in from overseas, forced labor. Worse. Vincent's voice was flat, emotionless, but his hands were clenched on the table. Daniel found shipping manifests that didn't match the official records. He confronted his supervisor, threatened to go to the authorities. So you had him killed? No. Vincent looked directly at her. I gave orders to scare him into silence, that's all. But someone in my crew decided that wasn't enough. Who? Eric Malone's father. He was my enforcer back then. He killed Daniel without authorization, then made it look like a robbery. Maggie felt like the world had tilted. 31 years of wondering why her husband had died, and here was the answer. Delivered calmly across a dinner table, while tourists took selfies 20 feet away. Why didn't you stop him? She asked, her voice breaking. Because I was a coward. I was building an empire, and exposing what happened would have destroyed everything. So I buried it. You let my husband's murderer walk free. I did worse than that. I promoted him. Maggie stood abruptly. I need to leave. Maggie, don't call me that. You don't get to. The first gunshot cut through the air like a crack of thunder. Then 3 more in rapid succession. Screams erupted across the pier. People started running in every direction. A child's balloon floated away, abandoned. Glass shattered somewhere behind them. Vincent was already moving. He grabbed Maggie and pulled her down behind the table as bullets punched into the restaurant's exterior wall. The server who'd brought their menus collapsed, clutching her arm and screaming. Stay down, Vincent said. More gunshots. Vincent's security team was returning fire somewhere near the parking area. Families dove behind benches and planters. A father covered his 2 children with his body. Vincent looked over the edge of the table, assessing. 2 gunmen, maybe 3, coming from the direction of the parking lot. Professional, coordinated. This wasn't random. This was an execution attempt. We need to move, Vincent said. When I say run, you run toward the Ferris wheel. Stay low. What about now? They ran. Maggie stumbled, and Vincent caught her, half dragging her toward a maintenance building. Bullets sparked off the concrete beside them. A little girl stood frozen in the middle of the walkway, crying. She couldn't have been more than 5. Her parents were nowhere in sight, probably separated in the chaos. Vincent didn't hesitate. He changed direction, running toward the child while Maggie screamed his name. He scooped up the girl and dove behind a concrete barrier just as another round of gunshots tore through the space where they'd been standing. The girl was sobbing into his chest. It's okay, Vincent said, his voice surprisingly gentle. I've got you. You're safe. Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The gunfire stopped. Vincent's security team had either driven off the shooters or killed them. Either way, it was over. For now. Vincent carried the little girl toward the gathering crowd of police officers. Her mother appeared, sobbing, and pulled her daughter from Vincent's arms. "Thank you," the woman gasped. "Thank you, thank you." Vincent just nodded and turned away. His shirt was torn, blood on his sleeve, not his own. His face was pale but composed. Maggie stood a few feet away, staring at him. "You could have been killed," she said quietly. "So could she. You protected her instead of chasing the shooters." Vincent looked at her, exhausted. What else was I supposed to do? Before Maggie could answer, Ryan appeared through the crowd, badge out, moving fast. "Mom!" He reached her, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine." Ryan's eyes landed on Vincent. Cold. Professional. "Mr. Cole, I'm going to need you to come with me for questioning." "Of course, detective." By midnight, footage from the Navy Pier shooting was all over the news. Cell phone videos showed the chaos, the screaming, the gunfire, and one image that went viral immediately. Vincent Cole, Chicago's most feared mob boss, carrying a small child to safety while bullets flew around them. The news anchors didn't know what to make of it. Mob boss turns hero during shooting. Vincent Cole saves child in Navy Pier attack. The many faces of Chicago's most dangerous man. In the bakery, Maggie watched the footage on her laptop. She watched Vincent risk his life for a stranger's child. She watched him shield civilians while his own security team fought off the attackers. She thought about the man who'd covered up her husband's murder and the man who just protected a little girl at the cost of his own safety. Ryan appeared in the bakery doorway. He looked exhausted. "We questioned him for 3 hours," Ryan said. "He cooperated completely, gave us everything about the attack, said it was likely a rival crew. Do you believe him?" Ryan was quiet for a moment. "I don't know what to believe anymore. The Vincent Cole I've been investigating for 5 years wouldn't have done what he did tonight." He looked at his mother. "What's going on, Mom? What's he told you?" Maggie closed the laptop. "Sit down," she said. "I'll tell you everything." Maggie woke up in a place she didn't recognize. Wooden walls, a stone fireplace, large windows overlooking a dark lake surrounded by pine trees. She sat up on the couch, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her neck stiff from sleeping at an odd angle. Vincent stood by the windows, phone pressed to his ear, speaking quietly. "I don't care what Eric says. Nobody moves until I get back. Yes, I'm serious. No exceptions." He hung up and turned to find Maggie awake. "Where am I?" she asked. "Wisconsin, about 2 hours north of Chicago. It's safe here." The memories came flooding back. The police questioning after Navy Pier, Ryan taking her statement, Vincent's lawyer showing up, and then Marcus appearing at her bakery at 3 in the morning, saying Vincent needed to see her immediately, that she was in danger. She'd been too exhausted to argue. "You kidnapped me," Maggie said. "I protected you. There's a difference. Ryan's going to be looking for me." "I called him an hour ago, told him where you are. He's not happy, but he understands." Maggie stood, her legs unsteady. "Understands what?" Vincent gestured to his phone. "My people intercepted communications from the crew that hit Navy Pier. They weren't just targeting me. They were targeting anyone I've been seen with publicly. That includes you." "Why?" "Because they want to isolate me, make me vulnerable." Vincent's expression was grim. "I brought you into this. Now I need to keep you alive long enough to get you out of it." Maggie walked to the window. The lake was gray under heavy clouds. Rain was coming. "You said you'd tell me everything," she said quietly. "About Daniel. About what really happened." Vincent was silent for a long moment. "I will, but once I do, there's no going back. You'll know things that could destroy what's left of my organization. Things that could put you in even more danger. I'm already in danger, and I've spent 31 years not knowing why my husband died. Maggie turned to face him. Tell me the truth. Vincent sat down heavily in a chair by the fireplace. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked old. Daniel was driving a route through our warehouse district in August of 1993. Vincent began. He was early for a pickup and noticed something wrong with the shipping manifests. Containers that weren't on any official records. He opened one. What was inside? Women, 12 of them, brought in from Eastern Europe. They were being trafficked for forced labor and prostitution. Maggie felt sick. Daniel went straight to his union rep. Vincent continued, demanded to know what was happening. The rep panicked and called my organization. The call went to Frank Malone, Eric's father. He was my chief enforcer back then. What did you tell him to do? I told him to scare Daniel, make him understand that what he'd seen couldn't be reported, offer him money, threaten his job, whatever it took short of violence. Vincent's voice was hollow. But Frank decided that wasn't enough. He was protecting a side operation he'd been running without my approval, so he killed Daniel and made it look like a warehouse robbery. Maggie's hand moved to her mouth. You knew? Not immediately, but I figured it out within a month. The pieces didn't add up. A union driver with no criminal record gets murdered for being in the wrong place? Frank's timeline had holes. His crew was too nervous. So you confronted him? Yes. And? Vincent looked at her with something that might have been shame. And I let it go. Frank was valuable. His crew was loyal. I was 28 years old, running the fastest-growing operation in Chicago, and exposing what Frank had done would have fractured everything I'd built. So I buried it. You promoted the man who killed my husband. 2 years later, I made him my second in command. Maggie felt tears burning in her eyes, not from sadness, from rage. You're telling me that for 31 years you knew the truth and you did nothing? I did worse than nothing. I protected Frank. When he died 5 years ago, I gave him a funeral with full honors. I told his son Eric that his father was a hero to our organization. Get out. Vincent stood. Maggie, get out of this room, right now. There's nowhere else to go. This cabin has 2 rooms. I'll sleep on the floor out here, but I can't leave you alone, not with assassins looking for us. I don't care. I want you gone. I want... Thunder cracked overhead. Rain began hammering against the windows. Maggie grabbed her coat. I'm leaving. It's a 2-hour drive back to Chicago through a storm. You don't have a car. Then I'll walk to the main road and call Ryan. She headed for the door. Vincent stepped in front of her. You walk out that door, you're dead within an hour. These crews don't care about storms or witnesses or consequences. They'll find you. Move. No. Maggie's hand connected with his face in a sharp slap that echoed through the cabin. Vincent didn't move, didn't react, just stood there, accepting it. I hate you, Maggie whispered. I hate everything you are. I know. Daniel was a good man. He tried to do the right thing and your world killed him for it. Yes. And you've spent 3 decades building an empire on top of his grave. Vincent's voice was barely audible. Yes. Maggie's anger broke into something raw. Tears spilled down her face. He was 34. We had a 2-year-old son. We were supposed to grow old together. We were supposed to... Her legs gave out. Vincent caught her before she hit the floor, guiding her back to the couch. She sobbed into her hands while rain pounded the cabin and thunder rolled across the lake. Vincent sat on the floor across from her, giving her space. When she finally looked up, her eyes were red and exhausted. Why did you tell me? She asked. Why now? Vincent was quiet for a long time. Because I'm ashamed, he said finally. For the first time in my life, I'm ashamed of everything I've built, every decision I've made, every person I've hurt. That doesn't change anything. I know, but maybe it's a start. Outside, headlights swept across the windows. Vincent was on his feet instantly, hand moving to the gun at his back. A car door slammed, footsteps on the gravel. Then Ryan's voice. "Mom, you in there?" Maggie stood, relief flooding through her. "Ryan!" Vincent opened the door. Ryan stood in the rain, badge out, 3 other detectives behind him. His expression was cold and professional. "Mr. Cole, my mother is leaving with me. Now." "Agreed." Ryan blinked, clearly expecting resistance. "What?" "She's safer with Chicago PD protection than with me." Vincent looked at Maggie. "I'll handle the crews looking for you, but you need to stay somewhere secure until this is over." Maggie grabbed her purse and walked toward her son without looking back. At the door, she paused. "Vincent." He looked up. "I meant what I said. I hate you." "I know." "But I believe you're ashamed. And that's the only reason I haven't told Ryan everything yet." She walked out into the storm. Vincent stood in the empty cabin, watching the taillights disappear down the long driveway. Then, he made a phone call. "Frank, it's me. I need you to set up a meeting. Federal prosecutors, Ryan Hayes, everyone." "Boss, what are you talking about?" Vincent looked at his reflection in the rain-streaked window, a tired man with dead eyes wearing a $5,000 suit. "I'm talking about burning it all down." The text from Eric came at midnight. "Meeting, Club on Vaca, tomorrow 10 p.m. Critical." Vincent stared at his phone in the darkness of his penthouse. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago glittered like broken glass. Frank Caruso sat across from him, nursing a whiskey. "It's a setup." "I know." "Then don't go." "If I don't, it looks like I'm hiding, like I'm afraid." Vincent set down his phone. "How many captains are with Eric?" "At least 4, maybe 6. They think you've gone soft since Navy Pier." "Because I saved a kid?" "Because you've been distracted, making decisions they don't understand, protecting some bakery owner while our territory's under attack." Frank leaned forward. "They're not wrong, Vincent. You have been different." Vincent didn't argue. He was different. Something had shifted the moment Maggie Hayes looked at him across that singles mixer table and saw through every layer of armor he'd built over 3 decades. "I'm going to the meeting," Vincent said, "but I'm taking precautions." "What kind of precautions?" "The kind that end this war before it starts." The club on Wacker Drive was one of Vincent's properties. High-end, exclusive. A place where business happened in private rooms, while music pounded 3 floors below. Vincent arrived at exactly 10 o'clock, with Marcus driving and Frank in the passenger seat. 2 other security guys in a follow car. The club's front entrance was locked. A bouncer Vincent didn't recognize opened the door. First red flag. "Mr. Cole, they're waiting downstairs." "Who's waiting?" "Mr. Malone and the others." Vincent exchanged a glance with Frank. The underground level was usually reserved for storage and the parking garage, not meetings. Second red flag. They took the elevator down. The doors opened to a concrete hallway lit by fluorescent lights. The music from upstairs was muffled, distant. Vincent's hand moved closer to the gun under his jacket. They walked down the hallway to a storage room that had been converted into a makeshift conference space. Metal table, folding chairs, 5 men standing around it. Eric Malone stood at the head of the table, perfectly composed in an expensive suit. Next to him were Tommy Benedetto, Carlo Rizzo, and 3 other captains Vincent had promoted over the years. Everyone was armed. Vincent stopped in the doorway. "Where's everyone else?" "This is everyone who matters," Eric said smoothly. "Come in, Vincent. We need to talk about the future." Vincent didn't move. "The future of what?" "The organization. Your organization." Eric gestured to an empty chair. Please, sit. Vincent remained standing. Say what you need to say. Eric's smile faded. Fine, we'll do this standing. The truth is, Vincent, you've lost focus. The Benedetto crew is moving into our territory. The feds are circling, and instead of handling business, you're playing bodyguard to some widow on the south side. Watch your mouth, Vincent said quietly. Or what, you'll kill me like you used to kill anyone who questioned you? Eric shook his head. That's the problem. The old Vincent would have already put a bullet in my head for this conversation, but you've gone soft. I've gone smart. There's a difference. No, you've gone weak. Eric stepped closer. Navy Pier should have been our chance to show strength. Instead, you played hero for the cameras. Now every crew in Chicago thinks we're vulnerable. Vincent's eyes swept the room. Frank had moved to his left, hand inside his jacket. Marcus was behind them in the hallway. The math was bad. 6 against 3. So what? Vincent said. You're here to take over? We're here to save this organization from your mistakes. Eric pulled out a gun and set it on the table, not pointing it, just making it visible. You step down, retire, disappear. We run things the way they should be run. And if I refuse, then this gets messy. The other captains drew their weapons. Vincent didn't move. His voice was ice cold. You really want to do this, Eric? It's already done. Everything happened at once. Frank pulled his gun and fired twice. Carlo went down. Tommy dove behind the table. Vincent grabbed the metal folding chair and threw it at Eric, then pulled his own weapon. Marcus was already shooting from the hallway, covering their retreat. Go! Frank shouted. They ran. Gunfire exploded behind them. Bullets punched through drywall and concrete. Vincent's shoulder burned, grazed, not serious. They made it to the parking garage. Cars everywhere, concrete pillars, poor lighting, perfect ambush territory. Vincent, Frank, and Marcus took cover behind a black SUV. More of Eric's men appeared from the stairwells, at least 10 of them. We're pinned, Marcus said. Vincent looked around. There, a service tunnel entrance near the back wall, maintenance access for the building's mechanical systems. That tunnel leads to the loading dock 2 buildings over. Can we make it? We have to. Frank provided covering fire while Vincent and Marcus ran for the tunnel. Bullets sparked off concrete. A car window exploded. They reached the entrance. Frank was still shooting, backing toward them. He never made it. A bullet caught him in the chest. He stumbled, fired twice more, then collapsed. Frank! Vincent started back. Marcus grabbed him. He's gone! We have to move! Vincent watched Frank's body crumple to the garage floor. Then he ran. They crashed through the service tunnel, feet pounding on metal grating. Behind them, Eric's voice echoed. Find them! They can't get far! Vincent and Marcus emerged into a loading dock area. They hot-wired a delivery van and drove through the night with no lights, no plan, just pure survival instinct. Maggie sat across from Ryan in an empty interrogation room at Chicago PD headquarters. It was 3 in the morning. She'd asked for this meeting. Insisted on it. I need to tell you everything, she said. Ryan looked exhausted. Mom, if this is about Vincent Cole, your father was murdered, not by random criminals, by Vincent Cole's organization. Ryan went very still. What? Maggie told him everything. Daniel discovering the trafficking, Frank Malone killing him, Vincent covering it up for 30 years, the confession at the Wisconsin cabin. When she finished, Ryan sat back in his chair, processing. Vincent told you all of this? Yes. Why? Because he wants to make it right. He's planning to cooperate with federal prosecutors, to give you everything about his organization. Ryan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then stood abruptly. I have to go. What is it? There was a shootout at one of Cole's properties, multiple casualties. He's on the run. Ryan looked at his mother. If what you're saying is true, if Vincent really wants to cooperate, then he needs to do it now, before Eric Malone and the others hunt him down and kill him. Can you protect him? Ryan's expression was conflicted. The man who covered up Dad's murder? The man who might be the only witness who can take down an entire network. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Then he made a decision. Give me his number. The federal courthouse on Dearborn Street looked like a fortress. Metal detectors, armed guards, cameras everywhere. Vincent walked through the main entrance wearing jeans and a plain jacket. No suit, no security, no pretense. Just a man about to destroy everything he'd built. Ryan Hayes met him in the lobby with 2 federal prosecutors and an FBI agent. They escorted him to a secure conference room on the 8th floor. Before we start, Vincent said, I need guarantees. Assistant Prosecutor Linda Chen opened a folder. We're prepared to offer witness protection and reduced sentencing in exchange for full cooperation. That's not what I'm talking about. Vincent leaned forward. Maggie Hayes gets full protection. Her bakery stays open. Any workers in my legitimate businesses who aren't directly involved in criminal activity get immunity. That's not how this works, the FBI agent said. Then we're done here. Vincent stood to leave. Wait, Chen held up a hand. We can work something out. Sit down. They negotiated for 2 hours. Vincent gave them the framework. Financial records showing money laundering through his casinos. Shipping manifests proving trafficking operations. Union contracts with corrupt officials. Names of politicians who'd taken bribes. Everything. This will take down half of Chicago's political establishment, Chen said, reading through the documents Vincent had brought. That's the point. Why? Ryan asked. Why are you doing this? Vincent looked at him, at Daniel Hayes' son, at the detective who'd spent 5 years trying to build a case that Vincent was now handing him on a silver platter. Because I'm tired of running an empire built on corpses. They worked through the night. Vincent gave testimony, signed affidavits, handed over flash drives containing decades of incriminating evidence. By dawn, the prosecutors had everything they needed to dismantle the largest criminal organization in Chicago. Vincent was placed in protective custody in a secure hotel room with 2 federal marshals outside his door. He called Maggie. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. Then his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You made a mistake, Vincent. Shipping yard on Goose Island. Come alone, or she dies. A photo attached. Maggie tied to a chair in a dark concrete room, blood on her face. Vincent's blood went cold. He tried Ryan's number. No answer. He called Chen. Eric Malone has Maggie Hayes. How do you know? He just sent me proof. I need to go get her. Absolutely not. We'll send a tactical team. There's no time. If he sees law enforcement, he'll kill her. Mr. Cole, you're a federal witness now. You can't just… Vincent hung up and walked out of the hotel room. The marshals tried to stop him. He disabled one with a swift strike to the throat and pushed past the other before they could draw their weapons. He stole a car from the parking garage and drove toward Goose Island. The shipping yard was a graveyard of rusted containers and abandoned equipment near the Chicago River. No lights, no workers, just empty industrial decay. Vincent parked outside the main entrance and walked in alone. Eric was waiting in the center of the yard, next to a storage container. Behind him, 3 armed men. Inside the container, Maggie was tied to a chair, gagged, terror in her eyes. You came, Eric said. I honestly wasn't sure you would. Let her go. Not yet. First, we're going to have a conversation about loyalty. Vincent stopped 20 feet away. She has nothing to do with this. She has everything to do with this. You destroyed our organization for her. You turned yourself into a federal witness because some widow made you feel guilty. Eric laughed, bitter and cold. My father was right about you. You were always too soft to run this business.
Your father was a murderer who killed innocent people. My father built an empire, and you just burned it down." Eric pulled out a gun and aimed it at Maggie.
"So now I'm going to burn what you care about."
"Wait," Vincent raised his hands. "You want revenge? Take it, but let her go first."
"Why would I do that?"
"Because you're Frank Malone's son, and despite everything, your father had honor. He would have let her walk." Eric's expression flickered. Doubt, anger, pride. "My father had honor? He worked for you for 20 years, and you covered up his greatest achievement because it didn't fit your moral code. His greatest achievement was human trafficking? His greatest achievement was doing what was necessary, something you never understood." Vincent took a step closer. "Then do what's necessary now. Let her go and kill me. That's what you really want?" Eric considered this. Then he lowered the gun away from Maggie and pointed it at Vincent. "You're right. That is what I want." The gunshot never came. Instead, floodlights exploded across the shipping yard. FBI, Chicago PD, federal agents pouring in from every direction.
"Drop your weapons, hands where we can see them."
Eric's men tried to run. They were tackled within seconds. Eric stood frozen, guns still pointed at Vincent, realizing he'd been set up. Vincent pulled out his phone, showing Eric the screen. It had been recording the entire conversation. "You used me as bait," Eric said. "I used myself as bait, and you confessed to everything." Ryan appeared through the chaos, weapon drawn, moving toward the container where Maggie was held. Eric's hand tightened on the gun. His eyes went wild. "If I'm going down." He swung the gun toward Maggie. Vincent was already moving. He tackled Eric before the trigger could be pulled. They hit the ground hard. The gun skittered away across the concrete. Eric threw a punch. Vincent blocked it and struck back, years of violence and rage pouring out in a brutal exchange. Federal agents swarmed them, pulling Vincent off Eric, forcing both men to the ground.
"Vincent Cole, you're under arrest."
"He's with us," Ryan shouted. "He's a federal witness."
The confusion lasted only seconds, but it was enough. Eric grabbed the dropped gun and fired wildly. The bullet meant for Vincent hit one of the agents instead. Return fire was instantaneous. Eric Malone went down, hit 3 times, and didn't get back up. Maggie was rushed to an ambulance, bruised and terrified, but alive. Vincent tried to follow, but federal marshals held him back. "Let me see her," he said. "Mr. Cole, you violated protective custody. You endangered a federal investigation. I saved her life." Ryan appeared, covered in dirt and looking exhausted. "Let him through." The marshals hesitated, then stepped aside. Vincent walked to the ambulance where Maggie sat wrapped in a blanket, paramedics checking her injuries. Their eyes met. "You came," she said quietly. "Of course I came. You could have died. So could you." Maggie's eyes filled with tears, not from pain, from something else entirely. "Thank you," she whispered. Vincent nodded, unable to speak. Ryan put a hand on his shoulder. "Come on, we need to get you back into custody before Chen has a heart attack." As Vincent was led away, he looked back one more time. Maggie was watching him, hand pressed against her chest, where her wedding ring still sat on a chain around her neck. The empire was gone, his organization destroyed, but for the first time in 30 years, Vincent Cole felt like he could breathe. The federal trial lasted 6 weeks. Vincent testified against 43 defendants, corrupt union officials, politicians who'd taken bribes, captains from his own organization who'd operated trafficking networks, business partners who'd laundered money through offshore accounts. He sat in the witness box day after day, answering questions in a flat, emotionless voice, while the courtroom watched Chicago's criminal empire collapse in real time. The media called him a traitor, a coward, a rat. Vincent didn't care what they called him anymore. When it was over, the judge handed down his sentence.
7 years, reduced to 3 for cooperation, with eligibility for witness protection upon release. Maggie attended the sentencing. She sat in the back of the courtroom, wearing a dark coat, her face unreadable. Their eyes met once. She nodded. Then she left. Vincent served 18 months in a federal facility in Pennsylvania before being released into witness protection. New name, new identity, new life. They offered him several locations: Arizona, Oregon, Montana. He chose Maine, a small coastal town called Whitlock Harbor, population barely 3,000, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and strangers were noticed immediately. The U.S. Marshals set him up in a one-bedroom apartment above a hardware store. His new name was Michael Foster. His backstory was simple: widowed contractor from Pittsburgh looking for a quiet place to retire. Nobody questioned it. Nobody cared. For the first time in 40 years, Vincent Cole didn't exist. Maggie closed her bakery on a Tuesday morning in April. 23 years. Gone. Ryan helped her pack up the equipment, the photographs, the memories. The building was sold to a developer who planned to turn it into luxury condos. "You don't have to leave Chicago," Ryan said. "Yes, I do." "Where will you go?" "My cousin has a cafe in Maine. She's been asking me to come visit for years." Ryan studied his mother's face. "Maine is where they placed Vincent." Maggie didn't answer. "Mom, I'm not asking for your blessing, Ryan. I'm just telling you where I'll be." Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Then he hugged her. "Call me when you get there," he said. Maggie arrived in Whitlock Harbor on a gray morning in late spring. Her cousin Sarah ran a small cafe called the Tidewater, right on the harbor, with a view of fishing boats and lobster traps. The cafe served breakfast and lunch to locals and the occasional tourist. "I'm glad you're here," Sarah said, showing Maggie to the small apartment above the cafe. "I could use the help, and honestly, you look like you could use the peace." Maggie unpacked her few belongings and stared out the window at the ocean. She'd left everything behind: her bakery, her neighborhood, her old life. But she hadn't left behind the memory of a man with dead eyes who'd saved a little girl while bullets flew around them. Vincent had been in Whitlock Harbor for 2 months when Maggie walked into the Tidewater one morning. He was behind the counter, pouring coffee for a fisherman named Tom who came in every day at 6. He looked up and froze. Maggie stood in the doorway, wearing a windbreaker and carrying a canvas bag. Her hair was shorter. She looked tired but peaceful. "I'm Sarah's cousin," she said simply. Vincent set down the coffee pot. "I know." Tom looked between them, sensing something, then grabbed his coffee and left quickly. They stood in the empty cafe, just the two of them, and the sound of waves against the dock outside. "How long have you been here?" Vincent asked. 3 days. "Did you come because—" "I came because my cousin needed help, and because I needed to leave Chicago." Maggie walked to the counter. "But yes, I knew you were here." "How?" "Ryan. He didn't want me to come, but he told me anyway." Vincent nodded slowly. "Do you want me to leave?" "No." "Are you sure?" Maggie looked at him for a long time. "I spent 8 months thinking about everything that happened. About Daniel, about your confession, about what you did at that shipping yard." She paused. "I'm not here to forgive you, Vincent. I don't know if I ever can. But I'm here." "That's enough," Vincent said quietly. 8 months passed. Vincent worked the morning shift at the Tidewater, 5 a.m. to noon. Making coffee, cooking eggs and pancakes, serving fishermen and retirees who came in for breakfast. He was terrible at it at first. Burned the toast, mixed up orders, forgot to smile. But gradually, something changed. He learned the regulars' names, remembered how they liked their coffee, started making jokes with Tom about the weather and the fishing season. For the first time in his life, Vincent Cole, Michael Foster, was just another person in a small town where nobody feared him.
and nobody cared about his past. Maggie worked the lunch shift. They overlapped for an hour each day, moving around each other in the small kitchen, occasionally brushing shoulders, neither of them acknowledging what was slowly building between them. It wasn't romance. Not yet. Maybe not ever. It was something quieter, something earned. The first snow came in November. Vincent arrived at the cafe before dawn to find Maggie already there, making fresh bread. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and warmth.
Couldn't sleep, she said. Neither could I. They worked in comfortable silence. Vincent started the coffee, Maggie finished the bread. Outside, snow fell softly over the harbor, turning the fishing boats into white silhouettes. The door opened at exactly 6 o'clock. Tom stomped in, shaking snow from his jacket. "Morning, Mike. Morning, Maggie." "Morning, Tom," Vincent said, already pouring his coffee. "Cream, no sugar." "You got it." Tom sat at his usual spot by the window. 3 more regulars came in behind him. The cafe filled with conversation and laughter and the simple rhythm of a small-town morning. Maggie stood at the kitchen doorway, watching. Vincent was smiling. Actually smiling. Not the cold, calculated expression he'd worn for 30 years, but something genuine. He was laughing at something Tom said about his grandson. His shoulders were relaxed. His eyes were alive. The dangerous man from the singles mixer no longer existed. In his place was someone smaller, quieter. "Human." Vincent caught her watching and raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Nothing," Maggie said. "Just thinking." "About?" "About how far we've come." Vincent wiped down the counter, considering her words. "Do you think we'll ever stop carrying it? The past?" "No," Maggie said honestly, "but maybe we don't have to carry it alone anymore." Vincent nodded slowly. Outside, the snow continued falling. The harbor was silent except for the cry of gulls and the distant sound of a foghorn. Later that evening, after the cafe closed, Maggie and Vincent walked along the harbor. The town was quiet. Christmas lights reflected off the water. "I still wear his ring," Maggie said, touching the gold band on her finger. "Daniel's ring." "I know. Does that bother you?" "No. It shouldn't." Vincent stopped walking. "I can never replace what you lost. I wouldn't want to." "Then what do you want?" Vincent looked at her, at the woman who'd called him exhausted instead of dangerous, who'd confronted him about dead eyes and expensive suits, who'd refused to be afraid when everyone else was terrified. "I want to stop running," he said. "From the past, from who I was, from what I did." "Redemption doesn't erase any of it," Maggie said quietly. "You know that, right?" "I know." "It doesn't bring Daniel back, or Frank, or anyone else who died because of the world you built." "I know that too." Maggie took his hand. It was the first time she'd touched him voluntarily since the shipping yard. "But maybe," she said, "it gives us a chance to finally stop running from it." They stood there in the snow, 2 broken people in a small town by the ocean, holding on to each other while the past whispered behind them and the future waited, quiet and uncertain. Vincent squeezed her hand gently, and for the first time in 40 years, he felt like he might finally be home.